You start sailing towards what appears to be another fairy island, but as you get closer, you realize that it's not quite like the others. Where others mostly resembled shells and huts, this silhouette forms more of a tower-like structure. You dock your boat and begin to have a look around. There are flowers and a mailbox just like the other fairy islands, but unlike the others, this tower doesn't have a door, rather a ladder. As you climb, you notice a series of surreal carvings comprise the body of the tower, essentially a totem pole. Images of moblins and fairies climb along with you until you finally reach the platform. You are greeted by the familiar grin of a convict that you rescued from prison, Tingle. Of course, you probably already guessed that by now thanks to the huge statue of his head that makes up the roof of the tower. And he already gave you a map that told you that this was his island. Actually, you probably came here knowingly. Still, the epicness of that intro will not be denied. Leave a like down below, and let's get started. Up on that platform, you find not only Tingle, but two of his family members, Ankle and Knuckle, pushing some mill which is connected to a shaft leading down the interior of the tower. Looking down into the darkness reveals nothing, and none of the brothers are going to talk about it, and you can bet Tingle isn't. There is undoubtedly some alternate purpose for this tower. The question is, what is it? What is the true purpose of Tingle Tower? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the Windwaker, Tingle Tower only purpose is to serve as a convenient location to find Tingle, who, after all, you are required to return to many times during the game to get your maps read. However, I think it's obvious that there's something more to it than that. Since none of the Tingle brothers mention anything about what they're doing up there, you're left to your imagination to decide for yourself. What they do mention is that apparently Tingle gets very harsh with them to the point of abuse, and it makes them cower in fear of his wrath. Remember how similar the island is to the fairy islands? Keep remembering that for now. All of this mystery begs the question, who is Tingle? He certainly is an interesting character, and a very specific one at that. He appears in the majority of the Zelda games across all the timelines, never changing one bit. He's always 35 years old, he always wears a green bodysuit, and he always wears a clock pendant around his neck. And he always has but one goal in life, to become a fairy. It's evident in all that he does that everything he does is an attempt to become a fairy. He never fails to mention it when you're talking to him, and the fishmen acknowledge it too. So here's the catch. He doesn't actively do anything to become a fairy once he escapes from Windfall Island. Or does he? What exactly is it that we've been overlooking for so long? Get ready. I already mentioned that Tingle gives you a chart to his island, but what's interesting to note is that it also includes the locations of the two Great Fairies. Now, why would Tingle, of all people, know where the Great Fairies are? They've been dormant or hidden for many years, and almost nobody besides the island locals know about their existence. How did Tingle find out about them? And furthermore, why does he need to know where they are? It's too easy to just say that it's because he's the map guy and he has maps. But I think it's not satisfying enough. Tingle was locked up on Windfall Island for, quote-unquote, looking weird. Really? Should we really trust the person who is locked up and believe what he says? Perhaps his punishment was for something more sinister. What if the Windfall Islanders somehow knew about Tingle's evil plans and decided to take matters into their own hands and stop him on their own? If they unanimously voted to lock him up for life, then they must have some reason. But what? Ladies and gentlemen, let me present you with the real reason Tingle was locked up and what the real purpose of Tingle Island really is. Well, remember how similar Tingle Island and the Fairy Islands look to one another? What if Tingle Island is a fairy fountain? What if Tingle, in his all-consuming lust to become a fairy, found a way to access the fairies? He has already successfully found one of the fairy islands and has employed his brothers to engage in the excavation. Tingle, in his all-consuming lust for becoming a fairy, found a way to access the fairies. He has already successfully found one of the fairy islands, which is, in fact, Tingle Island, and has employed his brothers to engage in an excavation of the underground cave where we know the fairy fountain is, all in order to extract their power to take for himself. If we take into consideration that Tingle now knows it's possible, It makes sense for him to want to go bigger, mining the Great Fairy fountains in the same way as his smaller experiment. It explains why he knows where they are, as well as what the giant drill shaft in Tingle Tower is there for. It also explains why Tingle was held captive. That was the reason they imprisoned him. And finally, it's why Tingle isn't floating around looking for ways to become a fairy, because he has found a way to become one. And it's all your fault as Link for freeing him in the first place. At least it all worked out in your favor in the end. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Zelda content, or check out some of my other videos. I had a lot of fun creating this theory, and I definitely have more in store, especially about Tingle. It seems there is a lack of Tingle theories on YouTube, and I'd be more than happy to fill that gap for you. Anyway, see you next time.